Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Beyond the Manuscript. As always, my name is Cooper Anderson, and today we are having a very light and breezy episode with our very special guest today, Miss Jessica Drake Thomas, here today to talk about her brand new book, Hollow Girls. Everyone, please welcome Jessica. How are we doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am having a blast. Thank you again for joining me here in this brand new studio. I want to give a big shout out to One Mill Street Studios here in Leamington Spa in England for letting me record here. Yes, this is going to be a very fun, very light episode, very different. Before we even get to the fun stuff here, Jess, can you please tell us all about Hollow Girls and how it came to be?
Hollow Girls is the story of Olive and Stasia. They are two best friends, and they like to play in the woods. And one day they go into the woods, and only Olive returns. Stasia goes missing without a trace. Olive doesn't remember what happened. 24 years later, she starts seeing Stasia everywhere she goes. And then she gets a call that her father has gone missing. He has also gone into the woods, and he has left behind research indicating that he has gone looking for Stasia. So she has to return to her hometown and go to the woods, which she's very afraid to do. I wrote this book in 2020 during the pandemic, which is funny because it's set in 2024. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be so relevant in 2024. Yeah.
Well, now I'm curious is when you have a book that's set in the future and then by the time it comes out, it's now the present. Were your predictions correct? Did you get it right? Like so many people do or don't?
Yes and no. I left out the pandemic. I just decided that I didn't want that to be a thing. So I just...
To be fair, I think we're kind of, like, just in the world of publishing, I remember, I think just so many people were tired of just pandemic stories for the longest time. And this always happens anytime this is what Stephen King has said, like every time there's just some kind of new virus, whether that's, like West Nile, Ebola, and then of course the actual pandemic, the sales for The Stand always skyrocket. Right,
Yes.
Which is his most famous plague book, and he actually gets weirdly a lot right about how America handles pandemics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think the world was like we're kind of virused out, if I'm being honest, a little bit.
I mean, I had time to edit it. I could have added the pandemic in, but I just was like, I'm already tired of pandemic stories, so I just left it out.
Cool. Like I said, before we get to the fun stuff here, where can people go buy a copy of Hollow Girls?
Anywhere books are sold, also cemeterydance.com.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, now that we've kind of done the self-promotion stuff out of the way, let's get to the fun part of this episode where we are going to be discussing our top 3 book hot takes. These are hot takes about books, about the world of books, about the people who enjoy books, and we are going to be giving our unfiltered opinion here. And do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Why don't you start us off?
All right, cool. So, first hot take opinion for me about the world of books. The reason your kids don't read is because you don't read. If you want your kids to read more, you should read more in front of them or read together as a family. And yeah, that's my big initial hot take there. The reason I'm such a big reader myself is I have just so many memories of not just reading books as a family, which I was right at that age where as a family we would read Harry Potter, right? We would go chapter by chapter in a book, and that's just how we spent time as a family. And those are really valuable memories to me. But also I just have memories of my dad and my mom just reading books, and it was just a normal part of life. And I don't think we do that anymore. Now, am I saying you have to do that in order to get your kids to read? No. But I do think, instead of listening to music or Spotify, let's listen to an audiobook in the car on the way to school. Let's have your kids decide a book that they want to read with you and have like a shared memory like that, of that kind of stuff. So that's my hot take for number one. If you want your kids to read more, you got to read more, and you got to do it together.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to model the behavior. Yeah.
So Jess, what about you? What's your number one
My
book hot take?
number one book hot take is that being able to predict the ending of the book is not bad.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
really love books that I know exactly what's going to happen. I find that that's very comforting if the plot goes exactly how I think it is. I feel like, especially being a writer myself, there's this pressure to write twists and like make it new, and that's not necessary.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, like I love a
I
book
think
where I'm like, this happened exactly how I thought it was. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Again, yeah, people get confusing of like if you subvert an ending, that means I was smarter than the audience. And like, not really. It's much more of you're going against the grain, and you have a real risk of making an unsatisfying ending that way. I think it's very easy to try and trick the audience, and you just make them angry.
Yep.
Like I believe George R. R. Martin even said this on stage once. He was like, it's not a bad thing if during a murder mystery book you figure out, the butler did it. But if it turns out the scullery maid did it, and you have to come up with a convoluted reason as to why that no one could figure out, well, then you just wrote a bad story. Like, it's not satisfying if you, especially in mysteries, if you don't leave enough breadcrumbs for the audience to have solved it.
Right.
So, good one. I think it's a really, really good hot take there, for sure. Hot take number 2, for me, hating a genre that other people like doesn't make you better than them.
Oh, that's
It's
so
like,
good.
it just kind of makes you an asshole, right? Like I said, let people enjoy their spicy, pulpy, messy books, and then you can enjoy whatever else you like. You are not in competition for who's the best at books. That's not a real thing. It's one thing to like a preference, but just because you hate what other people like doesn't make you better.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've been in academia in creative writing, and there is such a distrust of genre literature in academia, and I feel like that's really not necessary.
I totally agree. I remember going to get my master's degree in the UK in a very, very old university, and I would write mostly like short story fantasy book, like stories, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've had to navigate a professor. Like, I'll tell them the idea for my story, and then they'll go, okay. And they're just like trying to hold back of like the disdain they have for that genre on their face. And they're like, yeah, that sounds like an idea, that a direction to go with is a phrase I heard all the time. Yeah. But yeah, in the world of academia, I think the wheels the wheels turn very slowly, I think is the way to say that.
Absolutely. It's just, they would have it on the syllabus for all my classes. We're not writing genre literature. No zombies, no romance. I was like, why?
Yeah. So that was my second hot take. What is your second hot take?
My second hot take, going off of your hot take, is that genre writing can be good. I feel like that's something I've fought against for years and years in academia, because I'm on my PhD now. So I've been there for a long time, and I've just been telling them, it's good. It can be good writing. Genre writing can be good writing, and there's a lot to talk about. It's worthy of discussion and taking a serious look at it. A lot of people love genre literature, and I think there's just too much focus on literary writing and thinking that that's good, but I think genre writing is wonderful. So
yeah, to kind of piggyback off of that, one of the big criticisms that I always hear about fantasy or sci-fi is that oh, well, the rules don't matter because you can kind of do anything at the end. It's the classic of, oh, a wizard did it, and that's why everyone's saved at the end. And I go, that's just an example of bad writing, and especially bad genre writing. You can still do something very similar to like classic literature. Like, if the whole conflict is a woman, she's meeting, like she's has a budding romance, and she's in charge of a bookstore, and they're about to be run out of town by Barnes and Noble or whatever. You can still have an unsatisfying ending of like, oh, an uncle that we've never met before suddenly passes away and leaves her $1 bajillion in her will, and then they live happily ever after. You're just talking about bad writing, not bad genre writing, where an ending can kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, rules still apply to genre literature.
Yeah.
You can still write good books and their genre. You can't like look down on them just because they're genre.
Definitely. Also, like, imagine trying to be like a professor and then going to like students in your classroom or your lecture hall and being like, Lord of the Rings is not good, or Dune is not real writing. And I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's a reason these stories last forever. It's because they're amazing. Not just because there's, flying ships or flying eagles. It doesn't make them bad, for sure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Awesome. So, hot take number 3 from myself. This one's gonna ruffle some feathers. Ooh. For sure. But books are the superior art form. Like the great white shark, they've never had a reason to evolve. They've come in different forms, but they've never had to get better. Like, people still buy paperbacks of ink on paper. Unlike, the way movies have to evolve, how music's had to evolve, books have never had to do that. They are already the superior art form now. What's your opinion?
Well, books have evolved. That's not true. Originally, it was manuscript culture, and when in the early modern period, when the printing press started to come about, then you had this switch from handwritten manuscripts and how those were shared, which was very elitist. Like, you could only access the books if you had money to buy them. Or write them yourself. And then we had this,
but also like literacy
culture
itself was a form of gatekeeping as well.
Correct.
Like, if you had access to the written word, and the materials to make a book and then write it and then read it to people, you were a member of you had high status in a society.
Correct.
You were I'm thinking very Western here, like, you were a member of like the clergy, and people listened to things you had to say, because what are you going to tell people who don't know how to read what a piece of paper says? They have to come to you for information.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah. So once the printing press came about and once the literacy started kind of evolving, so
Everybody
I can see that
read.
part from there. But I'm
and
saying,
then,
and
then now we've got this evolution towards electronic writing, which ebooks, audiobooks, anything you can read on the internet, like, we have more access to literature than ever before because of it. So I see it as something that's constantly evolving. A book is no longer paper. It can be like on your phone or on your computer. So I see it as a constantly evolving thing. And I just remember when the ebook readers were first coming out, a lot of people were like, this is going to ruin the book. I don't see it as ruining the book. It's just another way to have access to literature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I will say as a benefit, though, especially with like Kindles or just e-readers in general, one of the features that there was a really big selling point when it first came out was the fact that you could change the size of the font. And for me, that was like a first like really big example of helping someone who was visually impaired or just didn't have, strong eyesight, because they used to have to hope that a publisher would write or print their book in a larger font, right? In a larger print type. And then if they didn't, they were kind of out of luck at that point. But with a Kindle, you can you can hit that little scroller, and you can have like the print as big or as small as you need it to be.
Yep, and you've got audiobooks too, so it's just easier to access books.
So that was my hot take number 3. What is your last hot take, Jessica?
Not every book needs a happy. We kind of covered this before. Let me try a different one. I have trouble trusting self-help books.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Good. That's yeah. Please elaborate more on that.
Like I've definitely picked them up and looked at them. I've edited a few in the past, and I just have trouble trusting them. I always have to go, okay, who is the author? What are their credentials? And I often find that it's somebody who does not have credentials that is writing a self-help book. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it's so weird because I'm also very similar to where I'm very hesitant with self-help books, to where not even so much if they have qualifications or not. It's always like, well, is this going to solve an actual problem, or is this going to tell me that I have a problem to solve, that kind of thing, and then not to give answers to do that thing. But also, I think you're right where in the self-help world, there's a lot of I call it fluff, or I think a better term would probably be there's a lot of book equivalent to stevia. It's fake sugar. It's not it's a lot of it is oh, you think you're getting nutrition from this when you're not really. The best example I have of this is The Secret, which I know everyone from 2009 knows exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, what's the newest one that I keep hearing all the time? Manifesting, right? Manifesting. There's a joke on Family Guy now of manifesting is just a very clever way of saying I'm lying to myself. and I have to then generate but the benefits, or I claim it was manifested when really I kind of just bought a thing.
And I just feel like I'm always having a discussion with the author while I'm reading. I talk to them. I'm why are you writing it this way? But whenever I'm attempting to read a self-help book, it's who are you to be telling me how to live my life? Who do you think you are?
I love the attitude behind that. Of you're not my real mom. You can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, I have so much trouble with that genre. It's
Any more hot takes before we wrap up today?
I do think that the paperback should come out first before the hardcover.
Ooh, interesting.
I have seen a
so
few
this is
books.
a cool trend. I don't know the trend, but it's a good. I would say a tidal shift to where paperback comes out, and now hardback. I keep seeing is reserved for special editions where the publisher puts in a little bit of extra work, a little bit of extra time, and then you can get a special edition for the book that you like. As opposed to hardback comes out first and then paperback. But tell me more about your thoughts on why paperback should come out first.
I love paperbacks. I prefer them. And so I will wait the 6 months to a year for the paperback to come out before buying a book.
Wow.
I don't like how I can't bend the hardcover. Because I like.
So this are you the kind of person? Because again, these are bonus hot takes, people. At the end of this episode, you're getting more for your money that you're paying for this episode. But for me, are you a person who you need to have a paperback copy so you can actually read the book, and then you could also buy a hardback copy to keep as a trophy on your shelf?
No, I just buy I have primarily paperbacks. I have this mechanic's jacket that I like to wear, and its pockets are the perfect size for a mass market paperback. So that way I can like leave the house and always have a book on me. So yeah,
I love the
need
idea right now of
paperbacks.
you just like fixing my brakes with this jacket on, and then you're like, oh, it's lunchtime, and you just pull out, I don't know, Twilight or something in your pocket, and you just read. And I'm like, my mechanic is awesome. It's a fun.
Yeah, yeah. It might be Interview with a Vampire rather than Twilight, but
There,
yes,
okay, there you go. Yeah,
yes, vampires.
we definitely stand Lestat for sure.
Oh yeah, he's the best. And I love Louis once he like gets his act together.
Yep.
I think he's a really good character, but Lestat like never gets it together. He goes through the whole Anne Rice like Vampire Chronicles, and he just every story happens because Lestat made a bad decision.
I agree for sure.
Yeah.
I was going back to hardback and paperbacks.
Yes.
Another hot take for me is I think the idea of a special edition, gold plating, $100 special edition of a book really defeats the purpose. I pretty much agree with you where a book should be enjoyed, it should be experienced, you should bend that spine, you should dog-ear the pages.
Yes.
It should be a little battered by the time you read it. Like there should be quote unquote battle damage, I think, for
Yes.
for your
Yes.
book when you read it, because then it really shows that you experienced it. If it's just like you said, a trophy on your shelf, why get it at all? It baffles me
Exactly.
too much.
Yeah. Books are made to be loved and read, not looked at on the shelf.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it kind of goes back to my first point of like, this in the same sense that if you hate another genre that other people like, it doesn't make you better. And just because you do like a certain genre, that also doesn't make you better than other people. And same thing goes to the fancy books. If you like your fancy books, and you use them specifically as a trophy to show off to guests who come by your house, I don't understand you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not trying to tank the whole like leather-bound versions of books industry, but I don't get you as a person.
Yeah, all my books are read hard.
Good.
So it's
Same.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's a very distinction on my shelf between the books I have read and the books I haven't, and you can always tell because one's beat up and one's not, for sure.
absolutely.
I think that's going to about do it for us here today. Jess, thank you so much for being a guest. Tell us one more time, where can people find your stuff?
Hollow Girls is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere else books are sold, cemeterydance.com. And then my other two books, Bad Omens and Burials, are also available on Amazon. And you can find more information about me at jessicadrakethomas.com.
Cool. All right. Yeah, and of course, Beyond the Manuscripts is powered by Manuscripts. Tell us in the comments down below, what are your 3 top book hot takes, and let's see if they compare to ours. I want to thank you, Jess, for showing up one more time. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.